Numbers chapter 35, verse 1. While Israel was camped beside the Jordan on the plains of Moab, across from Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, verse 2, Command the people of Israel to give to the Levites from their property certain towns to live in, along with the surrounding pasture lands. Verse 3, These towns will be for the Levites to live in, and the surrounding land will provide pasture for their cattle, flocks, and other livestock. Verse 4, The pasture land assigned to the Levites around these towns will extend 1,500 feet from the town walls in every direction. Verse 5, Measure off 3,000 feet outside the town walls in every direction, east, south, west, and north, with the town at the center. This area will serve as the larger pasture land for the towns. Verse 6, 6 of the towns you give to the Levites will be cities of refuge, where a person who has accidentally killed someone can flee for safety. In addition, give them 42 other towns. Verse 7, In all, 48 towns with the surrounding pasture land will be given to the Levites. Verse 8, These towns will come from the property of the people of Israel. The larger tribes will give more towns to the Levites, while the smaller tribes will give fewer. Each tribe will give property in proportion to the size of its land. Verse 9, The Lord said to Moses, verse 10, Give the following instructions to the people of Israel when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan. Verse 11, Designate cities of refuge to which people can flee if they have killed someone accidentally. Verse 12, These cities will be places of protection from a dead person's relatives who want to avenge the death. The slayer must not be put to death before being tried by the community. Verse 13, Designate 6 cities of refuge for yourself. Verse 14, 3 on the east side of the Jordan River, and 3 on the west in the land of Canaan. Verse 15, These cities are for the protection of Israelites, foreigners living among you, and traveling merchants. Anyone who accidentally kills someone must flee there for safety. Verse 16, But if someone strikes and kills another person with a piece of iron, it is a murder, and the murderer must be executed. Verse 17, Or if someone with a stone in his hand strikes and kills another person, it is a murder, and the murderer must be put to death. Verse 18, Or if someone strikes and kills another person with a wooden object, it is a murder, and the murderer must be put to death. Verse 19, The victim's nearest relative is responsible for putting the murderer to death. When they meet, the avenger must put the murderer to death. Verse 20, So if someone hits another person and waits in ambush, then pushes him or throws something at him, and he dies, it is a murder. Verse 21, Or if someone hits another person and hits him with a fist and he dies, it is a murder. In such cases, the avenger must put the murderer to death when they meet. Verse 22, But suppose someone pushes another person without having shown previous hostility, or throws something that unintentionally hits another person. Verse 23, Or accidentally drops a huge stone on someone though they were not enemies, and the person dies. Verse 24, If this should happen, the community must follow this regulation in making a judgment between the slayer and the avenger, the victim's nearest relative. Verse 25, The community must protect the slayer from the avenger and must escort the slayer back to live in the city of refuge to which he fled. There he must remain until the death of the high priest, who was anointed by the sacred oil. Verse 26, But if the slayer ever leaves the limits of the city of refuge, verse 27, and the avenger finds him outside the city and kills him, it will not be considered a murder. Verse 28, The slayer should have stayed inside the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer may return to his own property. Verse 29. These are legal requirements for you to observe from generation to generation, wherever you may live. Verse 30. All murderers must be put to death, but only if evidence is presented by more than one witness. No one may be put to death on the testimony of only one witness. Verse 31. Also, you must never accept a ransom payment for the life of someone judged guilty of murder and subject to execution. Murderers must always be put to death. Verse 32. And never accept a ransom payment from someone who has fled to a city of refuge, allowing a slayer to return to his property before the death of the high priest. Verse 33. This will ensure that the land where you live will not be polluted, for murderer pollutes the land, and no sacrifice except the execution of the murderer can purify the land from murder. Verse 34. You must not defile the land where you live, for I live there myself. I am the Lord, who lives among the people of Israel.